Hey everyone, it's Lance here from Epics'N'Stuffs, and in this video I'll be going through the process I use to take my freshly 3D printed models to fully cleaned and ready to prime or mount. There's already a lot of information about this online, and for good reason. Videos from the likes of Uncle Jesse, 3D Printing Pro and Mia K come to mind. And yet, with all those great resources, I still see this question asked very often on social media and also directly to myself via Patreon, Discord, Facebook and so on. So I thought I'd share my process in some detail with the aim of hopefully cascading some of that information. Even if you're a seasoned veteran at cleaning 3D models, maybe give it a watch. You might pick up something that you could implement into your own workflow. And luckily for you, it's a top-down method, so you don't have to stare at my ugly neck beard. Okay, so let's get going. Okay, so just like a cooking show, I'm going to go through some of the ingredients and kit you'll need to do what I'm going to be showing you here. A couple of disclaimers just before going in. Ultimately, what matters is the result. As long as it's done safely, both in a personal and environmental sense, and it works for you, then just keep doing it. There are certain materials here that are cheaper and more widely purchasable and or recycled, which might not be the case where you reside, so just be aware of that. I've set this up on a table with the overhead cam for ease of viewing, so that's to say I have a dedicated area for 3D printing and cleaning, and this isn't it. So some items here I am using for proxy and illustration purposes, so I'll be sure to point them out as and when, but you'll also see that they'll still do the job. Also, I don't use water washable resins anymore. I typically print hollowed models, so you can potentially skip some of these steps. I personally prefer the quality and finish of the resins I use and the merits of this particular workflow, but that is not to say that this is the definitive method for you, although some parts of it could be. Lastly, you might ask, why not use wash and cure stations from the likes of Anycubic or Elegoo? Those are cool units, and I definitely recommend them for small hobbyists who print a small amount of models at a time, but for my needs they're just too small. There's been several occasions where I've had to clean like 60 models and upwards in one sitting, and they're not really feasible. They're great products, just not ideal for me. Maybe when they release maybe like a Goliath unit, I don't know, an Elegoo Jupiter or something like that, then that'll be the time for me to invest. So just before you start cleaning, be sure you're in a well ventilated area, or have some sort of breather or mask on to aid against the fumes that come from chemicals and IPAs that you might be using. I'm in a well ventilated room, and I'm not wearing a typical mask for the sake of the video. However, I usually wear a filtered breather. So with all that malarkey out of the way, let's get on to the stuff that you'll want and need to replicate what I'm going to be doing here. Firstly, Nitrile Gloves. As you can see, I'm already wearing them, essentially for safety. The resin is toxic and in some cases can cause severe chemical burns, so gloves in some form are a must. I use nitrile as in my experience they hold up better than latex for doing this type of work, and that's also beneficial if you're allergic to latex. I get mine from Amazon. Next thing, you've been staring at it for a while, is a surface to clean your models on. I use silicone mats in particular. It just makes cleaning easier if you have something under everything, which is also easy to clean. They're readily available from Amazon. So next, I have a plethora of tubs, specifically the ones from Systema to store models in and to do a majority of the cleaning in form of these strainers in particular. Again, you can get these from Amazon, or your local supermarket should stock them. I also use 99% IPA. It's readily available in the UK and it's pretty cheap to source. I buy 5-litre bottles in bulk and I don't recycle it. Once it's done its job and is no longer effective, I dispose of it. I have some of these Systema strainers and tubs that are specifically for this purpose. I let the IPA cure over a long period of time when disposing of it until it becomes an inert jelly, and then dispose of that along with any cured resin and supports that I have. In other areas though, this might not be available and there are plenty of alternatives, but that's another video in itself. Again, you can get this from Amazon, but I personally typically go to places like eBay or direct to the supplier themselves. Next, pretty simple. Get these in very large quantities. I go through these very quickly. Paper towels, essentially. Used for cleaning up the IPA and resin, which will ultimately get absolutely everywhere. So, yep, a lot of paper towels. Then I have toothbrushes. I've got a few electric toothbrushes which are dedicated for cleaning models, obviously. Be sure not to cross-contaminate these with the ones you use daily. And I have an array of just regular toothbrushes as well, you know, if I want to be a bit more delicate. Another thing I buy in bulk is pipettes. So these are super helpful if you're cleaning hollowed models. Essentially, you can grab yourself some cleaning solution in the pipette and then insert that into the model's drainage hole, and then, you know, flush it, give it an enema essentially with the pipette. So yeah, these are really cool. They last a while. You know, you can buy them in packs of 100 very easily from, again, Amazon. And then yeah, just use these to clean the interior of hollowed models. Really helpful. Okay, the next thing is an ultrasonic cleaner. So I typically fill this with warm soapy water, and it's used as the last step of cleaning. Do not use IPA or any other chemical inside these for that matter. If these go bad with a flammable liquid inside, then you can create a fiery vortex of which nothing will survive. Unless you have like an extremely expensive medical grade ultrasonic cleaner and you know what you're doing, then this is essentially a water only device. I have a couple of these. This is the smallest one I have, which is 3 litres. And again, you can get these from Amazon or any hardware store. If you're cleaning larger models from larger printers and you still want to incorporate the cleaning step with the ultrasonic cleaner, then you can just scale this up. This is the smallest one we have. We have, I think, the biggest one I have, I think, is 10 litres. And these let you, you know, put it on a timer, and also set a temperature, which we'll be doing later on as the last step of cleaning. Once the model's been cleaned in the ultrasonic cleaner and are still warm, I use a craft knife just to help get some of the larger supports that I implement off. These are, again, this is super cheap. Again, Amazon or any hardware store. I've had this for several years now. It did not cost me much. I don't remember the exact price, but it's still going strong. I'm still on the original blade. So yeah, a craft knife to help remove supports. And then finally, a curing station of some sort. So I have this. So this is one of those things I was mentioning earlier, which is used as a bit of a proxy. This is a legacy bit of kit. I rarely use this anymore. It's just here in case of backup. But it's essentially a reflective bucket lined with 405nm UV LEDs. And then the model will go in the middle. You'll switch it on, and then you'll just have it cure. Like I say, I don't use this. I use this very rarely anymore. I have a dedicated curing station which can cure many models at once, whereas this is good for a couple at a time, really. This is essentially like a poor man's Elegoo Mercury. It's the same concept. So yeah, reflective bucket, some LEDs on the inside, 405nm UV LEDs, and that should have your model cured. I've got some models here stored in a Sistema tub. Contrary to some beliefs, you don't need to clean models immediately after getting them off the build plate. These models in particular have been stored for about 2 weeks in a dark box, so no UV lights get to it, but they'll clean up just fine. So from here on out, we'll be speeding up the video by 800 to 1000%. Otherwise, you'd be watching this for over an hour with not much going on. So to begin with, I drop them into a Sistema strainer filled with some manky IPA. I call this the dirty bath, and I use this until it's saturated with resin or has lost a large deal of its potency. I'll brush the model like you can see here, and also use the pipettes to get some IPA into the tough interiors. I'm essentially just using the electric toothbrush to get as much of the resin off as possible. Once each model is clean, I'll leave it on some paper towel to dry off and let the IPA itself evaporate. Again, using the pipette or submerging the model in IPA and letting the interior fill, I'll swash it around a little bit just to make sure it's getting into every nook and cranny inside the model. Once they're clean, I'll leave them to dry for roughly around about 15 minutes whilst the IPA evaporates, and then I'll move on to the next step. Once they're dry, I'll look for any spots which don't seem as clean as they could be, and that will become my next focus when cleaning in the clean or cleaner tub of IPA. Once the cleaner tub gets a bit opaque, this becomes or gets added to the dirty bath with some new fresh IPA replacing it. But for now, it's still fine to use for this particular cleaning session. Again, I just do the rounds on the models, clean anything that might be missed, and once again, leave it to dry. This particular cleaning session for these three models in the dirty and the clean IPF took around about 15 minutes, so all I did was crack on some music and get to work. So at this point, I start prepping the Ultrasonic Cleaner. I will leave the models to dry for a second time for around about 15 minutes again whilst the IPA evaporates. I'll fill the Ultrasonic Cleaner with some warm, mildly soapy water, not too much soap as it can begin to bubble and foam. I'll also set the temperature to about 40 degrees Celsius, 104 Fahrenheit, and the timer to about 30 minutes. Once I pop the models in, I make sure the interior gets filled with water, otherwise they'll bob around and not every area will get hit. I like to completely make sure they're fully submerged. This part of the process, utilising the Ultrasonic Cleaner, can get really noisy. If you have a separate room to do this in like we do, that would be ideal. Otherwise, it's something you want to leave and come back to later. I'll also get the craft knife out now and start prepping the models for removing supports. I'll remove the models one at a time. I still leave models I'm not working on soaking in the warm water. Otherwise, you'll bring them out and they'll start to become brittle and cold. So yeah, I'll leave them in the warm water, take them out one at a time, and then start removing the supports. A majority of supports will come off with little to no force. Depending on how you do supports or where you've got them from, there might be some which are a bit heavier, which is the case with these particular models. So I'll take a majority of supports off just by hand, and then any supports which would require a little bit more force, I will do utilising the craft knife. This can be quite a long part of the process, especially if you're removing supports from larger models which tend to be heavier and thicker and then don't just come off super easy. You'll need to, get the craft knife on or get the clippers out to get it done. I'll periodically pop the models back in the water to just give them a clean, and then sometimes I'll pull out a toothbrush or something like that just to get rid of some of the debris that was left from the supports itself. If you do yank a support out and it takes a chunk out of the model, it's not the end of the world. You'll probably find a lot of the little dimples and holes will get filled up later with primer. Alternatively, you can always glue things back together if you happen to break like a weapon. And finally, before curing them, I'll give them one more quick look over to make sure there's no IPA or resin still attached to the model which can be cleaned before curing. This is essentially the last good opportunity you'll have to clean the models before curing them. How long do I leave stuff to cure? Anywhere from 10 to 60 minutes. It really depends on the type of model you've made and the type of resin you're using. Hollowed models tend to take longer to cure, so I usually put them on their side as well as insert some LEDs into them to help curing. So once that time has elapsed and you're done curing and everything's solid, you're almost ready to prime and mount them. I'll usually go over one more drying step. In this instance, I've used a blower which I got from Amazon called an Opular, which is used to blow out computers and stuff like that, and I found in this instance it's really helpful for hollowed out models and making sure they're dry on the interior as well. This can be done with a hairdryer. You just want to be very careful about getting it too close to the hairdryer or it applying too much heat. And that's pretty much it. This is the result. You'll also be seeing some more recent prints using this method on screen, so is it any good? You tell me in the comments. If you have learned anything from the video or gained anything valuable, then a like and sub would be pretty sweet. As you may know, I have a Patreon where I release 3D minis monthly, as well as a My Mini Factory and Etsy store, where the models shown in the video should be available at some point. Check them out in the links in the description. Any and all support is very much appreciated. If you have any suggestions for future videos or content on the channel, then get in touch either in the comments or through the Epics'N'Stuffs Facebook group or Discord. Again, links are below. And that's it. Thanks again for watching, and hopefully see you soon. Stay safe.